All right, have and have not fans. Again, there are more videos on the way, even though this hiatus, come on now, there are more videos that are still in motion for me to put on this channel. And I went home for about a day and a half this weekend and talked with my mom about the haves and the have-nots because, you know, what else is there to talk about? And we got to a point, and again, this is just amazing how this, why I love talking with the show, with other people one-on-one about the show, because my mom brought up a great point that I didn't even consider at all. Now, it goes back to, you know, the whole, I wouldn't even call it a theory, but it's pretty much a fact of the show that everything pretty much goes around in a full circle. And what I wanted to bring up is the fact that, let's talk about the, and again, I might do another video on this subject or just, you know, throw it into this one. But I just wanted to say that one of the most exciting parts in my mind in regards to the finale was the supposed team up of Candice and Veronica. And Veronica knew that there wasn't, I guess you could say, something was off about Erica, and she even applauded Candice for knowing that, you know, well, you figured out that she really wasn't, you know, your bottom hoe anymore. She was pretty much working on her own accord with somebody else, because of course Candice figured out that Erica is working with Warlock. So Veronica wants in with the Erica Candice scheme just to get back at David. So it's pretty much that, you know what, it might seem like a three-way team up, but when in reality it's pretty much Candice and Veronica teaming up. But at the end of the day, we all know that Veronica is all about herself. I mean, it's almost, she and Candice are almost one and the same in a lot of ways. So they will use, I mean, I wouldn't even say work with other people, but quote unquote use other people seemingly on a partnership level, but at the end of the day they're doing it for their own means. Because even if the two do team up, I'm pretty sure they don't have, I guess you could say, more love for each other than they already do, which is non-existence. I feel like they might have a unspoken respect for one another. I mean, it's something that neither one most likely never admit to, but I feel like that connection's there, you know, between those two. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you want to go back before the finale, when I believe Veronica met up with Jeffrey and Candice at the hotel, if I'm not mistaken, that was around the same time she was trying to figure out who this mystery woman was that David was seeing. I believe it was around the time she was dropping off those flowers initially for Erica. You know, that's just my guess. But I just want to let you know that scene is important because I believe she brought up the fact that, well, Quincy's body was found at the house at around 6:30, but you lost the house to the bank around 5 o'clock. So technically speaking, that body can't be used in court because it was no longer your property. It was the bank's property. Now, keep that in mind, because this was my mom brought up and it just blew my mind. She said when I talked about the whole Jeffrey being arrested, she's like, well, when you think about it, I don't think it's going to hold up. Like, what do you mean? Well, remember, the reason Jeffrey is linked to the whole murder to begin with is because, you know, his car keys were found in Quincy's jacket, I believe, or his pockets. Because remember that Jeffrey was trying to move the body, and during that whole scuffle, he must have dropped his keys inside of you know, Quincy's clothing or something like that. And due to that, that's why he's linked to the whole murder to begin with. Not because he was stabbing him, but because those car keys. And then my mom brought up a good point. She's like, well, when you think about it, were those keys really Jeffrey's? I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? When you think about it, was the car in Jeffrey's name? And I'm like, oh, no, it wasn't. I mean, at least I don't think so, because think back to season 2, after the season 1 finale, when Jeffrey came out to his parents and he was waiting outside of Candace's and Amanda's apartment. Remember, he had nowhere to go because his mom cut him off. Bank account, credit cards, kicked him out of his apartment, took his car away. He had nothing. And it was all for the whole that's when the whole black sedan blackmail came into effect. And the only reason that Jeffrey was able to get his apartment back, the car back and everything, was due to the fact that he quote unquote agreed to, you know, go out with Melissa and stuff like that, basically become his mom's puppet just to make sure he stays in line, so to speak, in terms of his homosexual tendencies, and to be a man and give her a grandchild. And if I'm not mistaken, let's see, that's right, because what was I thinking of? after the whole hit and run situation with Wyatt, remember Veronica was the one to go in the back room, make the phone call to find out the location of the black sedan, and then went from there to hide it the entire time at the tow yard. So pretty much my mom was saying that, again, it goes back to the whole full circle theory of this show in regards to, well, you think about it this way, Veronica, quote unquote, helped herself when she took, well, excuse me, helped Quincy. I'm sorry about that. She helped Jeffrey and Candace with the whole Quincy's body thing about the whole bank foreclosing on the house. So technically speaking, the body couldn't be used in the trial. So wouldn't you think it'll be interesting if Candace flips the script on Veronica by saving Jeffrey by saying, well, those might have been his keys, but remember, the car wasn't in his name. So that'll be a great way to kind of like, you know, knock Veronica off her feet in regards to, you know, use her own tactics against her. I feel like that would be an interesting way of throwing things around, because here's why. Two reasons. Number one, when it comes to Candace, I feel like this would be a great, and again, this can be, this little message here could be utilized towards Charles as well. Remember that, you know, she's dealing with somebody who's experienced in the field that she was studying to be in. Remember, she went to law school. She didn't get to the bar yet, because remember, Professor Cannon wrote her a letter to have her escalated to the bar exam because of her quote unquote skill, but we all know what that's about. Remember, the reason he gave that letter was to kind of tell her to get Amanda off his trail, because remember, this was around the time Amanda was stalking him. But then remember, after being abducted by the Malones, Jim had the entire apartment emptied out. So the letter that Professor Cannon wrote for Candace was taken away as well. Then after that, Candace was in between a rock and a hard place where she needed to get a job. So during that time, it was when she was trying to get Maggie Day and David to get her set up at a law firm. So she kept calling Professor Cannon to give her another letter. But remember, at this point, Cannon was dead. You know, had been killed off by the whole, you know, it was the bloodbath that Jim ordered. And the reason I bring it up is because remember that Veronica is a specialist in that field. And even Hannah and Jim and countless other characters said, if you use if you use your powers for good, Candace, all this blackmail and deceit, if you put that energy towards law school, you'll be one of the best lawyers. And I agree, because remember the whole Tony trying to get Benny off of life support, when she just bust up in the courtroom and helped Hannah defend, you know, her son. And I wouldn't say won, but pretty much stalled long enough so they could find other options. That was just one scene, and she didn't even get to the bar exam yet, and she was able to kind of, you know, defend Tony off long enough for them to not take him off life support. So what I'm thinking of is the fact that at the moment, Veronica has one over on Candace, not to mention the whole, you know, getting her out of jail in the recent finale. Just showing her power, kind of like when Charles demonstrated his power by almost having Candace arrested by Secret Service. So at the moment, it seems that Candace is kind of like in Veronica's debt, so to speak. You know, hey, you let me in on this little plan with David and I'll get you out of jail, which she did. Then you look at Charles, where it's like, as long as I hold the power chair, I can trust you. Now that leads to point number 2. When it comes down to Candace, we all know she really isn't the most trustworthy person. Pretty much if she's in a bind, like Veronica, she'll use whoever she needs to in order to get out of it. Like, for example, Jeffrey has stuck his neck out for Candace so many times. Yes, I do understand that Candace was the one that finally gave him the courage to come out of the closet, and his life was... it's hard to tell if his life got better as a result. It's more freeing, but at the same time, even though it was more free in terms of his lifestyle, Veronica's grip on him just increased like 20-fold, if you want to put it that way. And the reason I bring up Jeffrey in point number 2 is the fact that, will Candace help Jeffrey get out of jail? Because if you remember, originally it was Charles's plan to have Benny take the fall for the Quincy murder so Candace could get a clean slate. Candace really isn't trying to be involved with Charles right now, just because she's way too preoccupied with the whole Quincy Jr. thing. So let's kind of like fast forward maybe 5 episodes into the next season in January. Maybe when the whole, you know, Quincy Jr. saga is over, so to speak, when he gets buried or cremated, depending on what's going to happen. And you're probably wondering, well, hey, he's probably going to be cremated, because remember that Candace walked off with the funeral director. But remember, they went off to talk about being cremated off screen, so we don't know how much that's going to cost. We don't know if it was a deal made where it's like, hey, you have him cremated when I come back with the money. Because remember, Candace got arrested. So after she got out of jail, thanks to Veronica, did she go back to the funeral home, to finalize the details of the cremation? We don't know that. So let's just say that when Charles comes back to town or makes a phone call, or, Candace calls him, whatever the case may be, that I feel like Charles might be the one to call her. Reason being is because if word gets out that Jeffrey got arrested due to the Quincy Senior murder, then that means Candace will most likely be taken off the news reports. And then Charles will be like, hey, this guy took the fall. And then remember, Candace doesn't know anything about this because she was in jail. So Veronica won the case. Well, I guess you could call it the preliminary trial is the technical term. So that happened at the tail end of the episode. So Candace probably got out of jail off screen before, Veronica went to pick up Melissa, and then the whole car wreck incident. What I'm thinking is Charles will make the call. Candace will be like, what the hell's going on? She might go to, to the jail cell to visit. I don't know, but we all know Candace. I would like her to do that just to kind of talk with Jeffrey to see what's going on, because I'm pretty sure, Veronica being in the social status she's in, especially just getting out of court, she might be on the news as well, for the car wreck. But remember how long it took for Candace to learn about Quincy Jr. There's no telling how long it'll take for David, let alone Jeffrey, to find out what happened to his mother. And the reason I bring up Jeffrey is the fact that, again, you look at how many times that he stuck his neck out for Candace, the most prominent one being walking in on Quincy almost killing her. He saved her life. That he was led to believe he killed Quincy. It wasn't Candace's fault at first. It wasn't Candace's fault at first that he believed he killed Quincy. Because remember, Quincy, quote unquote, came back to life episodes later when Candace was trying to, I believe, what was she? That's when she was wearing that black hoodie and was trying to put his body in like those garbage bags or whatever. And then he grabbed her ankle, and then she just watched him die. And then later on, I believe Candace went over to the Crier house when Wyatt and Jeffrey were there, and he was like, I don't want to have anything to do with you, Candace. You're the reason I keep getting into these situations. It's crazy. And she tries to make him feel bad by saying, making stab gestures with her hand, trying to make him feel guilty and pin the blame on him. When remember, as Jim told Candace, Jeffrey inadvertently killed Quincy, but she was the one to allow him to die. You know what I mean? Because remember, she could have called 911 to try to save his life. And there are so many times where it's just Jeffrey put himself out there, but when it comes time to return the favor, because Candace's ass is in the fire, she doesn't want to do it. Like, Jeffrey, as David even put it, why didn't you call the police as soon as the incident with Quincy happened? Candace didn't let me do it. Remember, she took his phone and threw it in the garbage disposal. Because I'm pretty sure, again, I'm not pretty sure, but I'm confident that the consequences wouldn't have been as severe as Candace made it seem if they explained the situation, because it was a home invasion as well as a physical assault. Now, when it comes down to the Jeffrey situation, my question is, will Candace help out Jeffrey by double-crossing Veronica by stating that, hey, you know what, the keys were found on Quincy's person and they're Jeffrey's keys, but remember, the car isn't in his name. So that raises the question of, will Veronica get double-crossed by pretty much? I feel, okay, we all know that, again, in my opinion, Candace has not been the bad bitch in the series for quite some time, because that title went to Veronica. Now, if there was ever a time for Candace to usurp Veronica and become the bad bitch again, this would be that moment for her to, be in court and then flip the script when Jeffrey's on trial. Because let's say if Melissa is killed during the car wreck that we saw in the finale, then you can almost say that the trial of Jeffrey will be the substitute for the wedding of Jeffrey, in terms of Veronica getting what she wants to get back at her son, to keep him in line. And then Candace comes out of nowhere and defends him. That would be a great, in my opinion, a redemption of her character. Not fully, but enough to, kind of give her some credit. Not too many people can outsmart Veronica, put it that way. We've seen it a couple of times, but I said in the finale review that, Melissa has joined the very minimum club of people who scared the shit out of Veronica, like Quincy and Catherine. Now, going back to kind of point number one in regards to Candace being in a situation where, you know, Veronica has won over her, Charles has won over her. If there was ever a time for her to reclaim that bad bitch titles, to be, of course, to double cross Veronica and maybe even, you know, get one over on Charles, because I feel like Charles is being sensitive to the situation with Quincy Jr. But at the end of the day, it's all about power for characters like Jim and Candice and, of course, Veronica when it comes to control. So in my mind, I'm kind of thinking here that just like, I guess you could say, if there's the trial of Jennifer Salison, the question of will Wyatt's word hold up in court because he's a recovering addict when he was talking with the DA. Will the same thing hold up in regards to, wait, well, if Jeffrey is driving around in a car that Veronica owns, which I'm pretty sure she does, because remember, David even tried to give Jeffrey money for a hotel back in season 3, or, you know, it was after the house burning when Veronica burnt the house trying to kill David. And Jeffrey's like, it's okay, I have a little bit money saved up, you don't need to do that for me. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't have enough money to afford a car. So remember, after quote unquote coming around for Veronica, she allowed him to go back to the apartment and gave him his car back, and, you know, well, or at least give him a car, because remember, I don't think she gave him the black sedan, because the black sedan had been at the tow yard for quite some time, so it's probably another vehicle. So my theory is the car keys will definitely play a role in the upcoming trial. And I'm trying to think back. I can't recall what kind of car Jeffrey had, because remember, for quite some time he was driving around in a taxi cab everywhere, you know, on his date with Melissa, when he went over to the Cry House to see Wyatt about his car. And I'm trying to think if there was a scene where Jeffrey was driving. He didn't drive a cab, I believe, to Candace's house. I don't believe he drove a cab to Candace's house. I do know that he had to move Quincy's car when Justin first arrested him that one time, and, you know, Jeffrey had been drinking. But those keys, oh yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's when Candace went to the door, you know, almost naked, coming out of the shower to greet Justin, because that's right, because if I'm not mistaken, Jeffrey had to dig around on Quincy's body to find the car keys to move the car, because Pearl called the cops, well, called Justin. So I believe when Jeffrey was doing that, that's how his car keys got, you know, lost in Quincy's clothing, and then when Benny moved the body, they were buried along with it. So with that being said, this video is just kind of a theory about, will Jeffrey be in jail for long? And if it comes down to the actual trial, will those car keys play a role? Now, with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, because I do have a couple more videos I want to record tonight, and I can't wait to talk to you in the next one.